The stars above Nova Reach were calm and bright, giving no sign that danger was coming. It was a peaceful night on the colony world. Families walked along the streets, children played in open parks, and the sound of music came from small gathering halls. Nova Reach was one of the farthest human colonies, a place where settlers came to start a new life away from the crowded cities of Earth. The colony was built on wide plains under a sky with 2 small moons, and many believed it would remain untouched by war for many years. But far beyond the calm horizon, deep in space, something moved toward them. The Zorath Empire had arrived. Known across the galaxy as the deadliest power, the Zorath had destroyed dozens of civilizations. They were not driven by peace or trade. They took worlds by force, stripping them of resources and using the survivors as labor. Their massive warships were said to crush any defense in hours. Captain Mason stood on the command bridge of the human defense ship Horizon. His dark eyes studied the sensor readings. Around him, his crew worked in tense silence, their screens showing large, moving shapes that glowed with power. Mason knew those shapes were not friendly. "How many ships?" he asked, his voice steady but firm. 17 warships confirmed, sir, and 1 much larger vessel at the center, replied Ensign Drew. "The flagship." Mason crossed his arms. "They are sending a message before they even speak. They want us to see their strength." A calm but alert voice came through the communication line. "Captain Mason, this is the Global Council. Our satellites have confirmed Zorath signatures. You are to make first contact. Try diplomacy if possible, but protect the colony at all costs." Mason took a deep breath. "Understood." The crew worked quickly, opening a secure channel to the incoming fleet. The holographic projector on the bridge lit up, showing the image of the Zorath commander. He was tall and covered in armor-like scales, with cold yellow eyes that seemed to look down on everything. His expression was one of amusement, as though he already considered the humans beneath him. "This is Captain Mason of the Earth Defense Fleet," Mason began. "You are entering human territory without permission. State your purpose." The Zorath commander gave a slow smile. "I am Commander Vurok of the Zorath Empire. Your world is now under the protection of the Empire. You will surrender your weapons, your ships, and your resources. In return, your people will be allowed to serve." Mason's jaw tightened. "We will not surrender. Turn back or face humanity's answer." Vurok gave a sharp laugh. "Your species is young. You have not yet learned how the galaxy works. Every civilization that has opposed us has fallen. You will be no different." The hologram vanished without another word. Seconds later, alarms screamed across the horizon. The Zorath fleet began moving into attack formation. Their warships glowed as energy weapons charged. "Evasive maneuvers!" Mason ordered. The horizon rolled to the side as a beam of blue light tore past, striking one of the smaller human escort ships. The blast ripped through its hull, and in moments, it was gone. The crew felt the shock of loss, but Mason gave no time for grief. "Scatter the fleet. Do not meet them head-on. We will make them chase us." In orbit above Nova Reach, human ships spread out, using speed to stay out of direct fire. The Zorath moved with frightening precision, their formation tightening like a hunting pack. Yet Mason knew something important. Humanity had fought wars before, always against stronger enemies, and had survived by being unpredictable. Back on Earth, the Global Council was in a state of urgency. In a chamber filled with representatives, scientists, and military leaders, voices argued over the best course of action. Some wanted to send reinforcements immediately. Others warned that sending more ships without a plan would only lead to more destruction. In one corner, Dr. Lena Hayes, a leading weapons engineer, spoke to the council. "The Zorath's strength is in their shields and heavy weapons, but they have one weakness. Their systems rely on a single energy network that can be disrupted. We have been working on a device that can do this, the Aegis Array. It was meant to be tested next year, but this is our only chance. Counselor Dean looked doubtful. The Aegis Array is untested. If it fails, the Zorath will crush us before we have another chance. Lena met his gaze. If we do nothing, they will crush us anyway. The council voted quickly. The Aegis Array would be activated and prepared for deployment. It would need to be placed dangerously close to the Zorath flagship for maximum effect. A small, fast, and skilled crew would be chosen for the mission. On the horizon, Mason received the update from the council. His eyes narrowed as he considered the plan. It was risky, but it might be the only way to win. Inform Commander Arya that she has the mission. She will lead the insertion team. Outside, the battle still raged. Human ships darted through the void, firing short bursts at Zorath warships before pulling away. The Zorath pushed forward, confident in their power, unaware that humanity had already started building a trap. From the ground on Nova Reach, civilians watched the bright streaks of light across the sky. Most did not know what was happening, only that their home was under attack. Families gathered in shelters, hoping the defense fleet would hold. Mason stood at the front of the bridge, his hands resting on the edge of the display table. His voice was quiet but certain. They think we are weak. They think we will break. Let us show them who we are. The horizon turned sharply, its engines flaring as it sped toward a cluster of Zorath ships. The battle for Nova Reach was just beginning, and the galaxy's deadliest empire had no idea that this time their enemy was human. The horizon weaved through enemy fire, its hull glowing from the heat of near misses. Every blast that passed too close shook the ship like thunder. Mason stood tall at the center of the bridge, giving sharp, calm orders while the crew moved quickly around him. The smell of heated metal and the constant hum of the engines filled the air. The Zorath fleet was closing in. Their ships were larger, heavier, and faster than most human vessels. The humans relied on speed and quick maneuvers, striking and retreating before the Zorath could land a decisive blow. But Mason knew this could not last forever. Sooner or later, the enemy would trap them. On the tactical display, Ensign Drew pointed at a moving cluster of red marks. "Sir, they are splitting their forces. A group is heading toward the colony." Mason's eyes hardened. "They want to hit the civilians and force us to surrender. Send half of our interceptors to block them. We hold them at the edge of the atmosphere." The interceptors shot forward in tight formation, engines burning bright. They met the Zorath head-on in a burst of laser fire. Several smaller enemy craft broke apart, but the Zorath pushed forward, their armor absorbing most of the hits. A transmission came through, filling the bridge with the voice of Commander Vurok. "Human Captain, your resistance is pointless. Surrender, and your people will be spared needless suffering," Mason replied without hesitation. "You have made a mistake coming here. We are not your prey." Vurok's voice was calm, but there was a hint of irritation. "Then you will be the first to fall." The transmission cut off. Without warning, the Zorath flagship opened fire. A concentrated beam of energy struck one of the human frigates, tearing through its shields and armor in seconds. The ship exploded, scattering debris into the black void. The loss hit the human fleet hard. "Frigate Hawk is gone, sir," Drew reported quietly. Mason did not let the moment slow him. "All ships fall back to defense line 2. Keep them chasing us. We cannot match their strength yet." Back on Earth, the Global Council received live reports from the battle. Images of destroyed ships and the burning skies above Nova Reach filled the great chamber. Many of the council members looked shaken. Counselor Dean leaned forward. "At this rate, the colony will fall within the hour." Dr. Lena Hayes stood and spoke with urgency. "The Aegis Array is almost ready. If we can get it close enough to the flagship, we can disable their shields and weapons, but the delivery will be dangerous. The enemy will guard the flagship with everything they have." Another counselor asked, Who will take it? Commander Arya, Lena said firmly. She has led deep space operations before. She can slip past their defenses. The Council approved the mission. A message was sent to the horizon, and Mason called Arya to the command deck. She arrived quickly, wearing a light tactical suit, her expression calm but focused. Mason explained the plan. The Aegis array will be loaded into your shuttle. You will use asteroid cover to approach the flagship. Once in range, you will deploy it and get out before it detonates. Timing is everything. Arya nodded. Understood. When it activates, you will have a short window to strike before they recover. Mason looked her in the eyes. It will be dangerous. Do not take unnecessary risks. She gave a small smile. I never do. While Arya prepared, the battle continued. Human ships fought fiercely but were forced to give ground. The Zorath advanced step by step toward Nova Reach. The colony's defense platforms fired constantly, sending streaks of red and blue across the night sky, but even they were starting to weaken under the endless assault. On the ground, civilians were being evacuated to underground shelters. Children clung to their parents, frightened by the deep rumble of distant explosions. The colony governor, a strong-willed man named Harris, stood outside the main command center, watching the skies. He refused to leave, even when urged by his staff. If the people see their leader running, they will lose hope, he said. In orbit, Mason was buying time for Arya's mission. The horizon darted in close to fire at the Zorath's side ships, drawing their attention. 2 enemy vessels broke formation to chase him, leaving a small gap in their screen. Arya, go now, Mason ordered. Her shuttle, the Swift Wing, slipped out from behind a debris field and headed toward the gap. The Zorath did not notice at first. The small craft blended in with drifting wreckage and asteroid shadows. Inside, Arya and her crew of 4 worked in silence, monitoring enemy movements. Target range in 10 minutes, her pilot whispered. The Aegis array sat in the center of the shuttle, secured and armed. It was a smooth black device with faint blue lines running along its surface, humming softly as it powered up. On the bridge of the Zorath flagship, Commander Vurok watched the battle with narrowed eyes. These humans are stubborn, he muttered. His second officer spoke with cold certainty. It will not matter. Their fleet will break soon. But Vurok had noticed something. A few small sensor echoes near the asteroids. He ordered his ships to scan the area more closely. Back on the Swift Wing, alarms began to beep softly. Arya's navigator frowned. They are starting a focused scan. We need to speed up. Push the engines, Arya said. We get in, drop the device, and vanish. The shuttle slipped deeper into the shadow of a massive asteroid, using its rotation to hide their movement. The flagship loomed ahead, a giant structure of dark metal lit by rows of red lights. The mission was about to enter its most dangerous stage. In the distance, Mason's fleet continued to fight, holding the enemy's attention for just a little longer. But even he knew the line could not hold forever. Every passing minute was a race. Arya against discovery, and Mason against destruction. The stage was set. Humanity had made its stand, and the next move could decide the fate of Nova Reach. The Swift Wing glided in the darkness between drifting rocks and broken fragments of old ships. Arya kept her eyes on the flagship ahead. Its massive hull seemed to stretch for kilometers, a wall of dark armor and red glowing lines. It looked more like a moving fortress than a ship. Every few seconds, beams of light scanned the area, searching for hidden threats. Inside the shuttle, the crew worked quickly but quietly. The pilot, Ryan, adjusted their course by small degrees, making sure they stayed in the blind spots of the scans. The engineer, Kalen, checked the Aegis array's power levels again and again. The device was stable, but it gave off a low hum that seemed to fill the air, reminding them of the dangerous task ahead. How close do we need to be? Ryan asked in a low voice. Within 3 kilometers of their main reactor chamber, Kalen replied. The array will send a burst that will jump through their entire energy grid. Shields, weapons, engines, everything will go dark for a short time. Arya nodded. And that is when Mason will hit them with everything we have. Behind them, the horizon was still locked in battle. Mason's fleet had taken damage, but they were holding the Zorath back from reaching the colony. Mason's plan depended on timing. If Arya deployed the Aegis array too soon, the enemy could recover before the fleet struck. Too late, and the human defense line might already be broken. On the bridge of the Zorath flagship, Commander Vorok studied the battle with narrowed eyes. The humans were fighting harder than he expected. His second officer spoke carefully. Commander, we have detected faint energy readings near the asteroid field. It may be nothing, but it is unusual. Vorok's gaze sharpened. Increase patrols in that sector. I do not believe these humans are only fighting to delay us. Something else is happening. 2 small Zorath scout ships broke off from the main fleet and headed toward the asteroid belt. Their engines lit the darkness, and their sensor arrays swept across the rocks. On the swift wing, Arya saw them appear on her display. We have company. Ryan, hold course, but be ready to adjust. The crew's breathing grew tense as the scouts drew nearer. Arya ordered Kalen to reduce the shuttle's power output to minimum. The lights inside dimmed until the only glow came from the array's faint blue lines. The ship floated silently, hidden in the asteroid's shadow. The scouts passed within. 200 meters, their search beams sweeping across nearby rocks. One of the beams brushed the edge of the Swift Wing's hull. Arya's hand hovered over the emergency thruster control, but the scouts moved on without changing course. They soon vanished into the distance. Ryan exhaled slowly. That was close. We cannot afford another, Arya said firmly. Let's finish this. Minutes later, the flagship filled the shuttle's forward view. Its sheer size was overwhelming. Massive gun turrets lined its sides, each capable of destroying a human capital ship in one shot. Long rows of docking bays opened and closed, releasing swarms of fighters into the battle beyond. This is as close as we can get without being detected, Ryan said. Then prepare the pod, Arya ordered. The Aegis array was mounted inside a black drop pod no larger than a cargo container. It was fitted with a small thruster unit to guide it toward the target. Once in place, it would attach itself magnetically to the flagship's hull. The activation sequence would be automatic, giving the Swift Wing time to escape. Kalen keyed in the final commands. The pod's thruster hummed softly. Pod ready? Once we launch, there is no going back. Arya stared at the flagship for a moment. Launch it. The pod slipped out from the shuttle's underside and drifted forward. The small thruster flared for a second, pushing it toward the massive warship. On the Swift Wing's display, a small blue marker showed its progress. It moved slowly, like a seed carried by the wind toward a towering tree. Inside the flagship, the Zorath crew were focused on the larger battle. No one noticed the tiny shape approaching among the chaos of distant explosions. The pod reached the flagship's armored surface and latched on with a faint metallic click. Contact made, Kalen said. Array is locking into their energy grid. A faint pulse of blue light rippled across the pod, invisible to the enemy. Data streamed across Kalen's screen as the device linked itself to the flagship's power systems. The hum inside the shuttle grew louder. Arya opened a secure channel to Mason. Packages in place. Activation in 2 minutes. On the horizon, Mason allowed himself a thin smile. Understood. We will be ready. As the seconds ticked down, the tension inside the Swift Wing grew heavier. Every crew member kept their eyes on their instruments, waiting for any sign they had been discovered. Then, a loud signal sounded. Array activated, Kalen announced. A shockwave of energy burst outward from the pod, invisible to the eye but deadly to Zorath systems. Across the flagship, lights flickered. Shield barriers wavered and collapsed. Weapon systems froze mid-charge. Engines slowed to a crawl. The effect spread rapidly to nearby warships as the energy pulse jumped between linked systems. On the Horizon's bridge, Drew shouted, "Enemy shields are down!" Mason's voice rang out. "All ships, attack now!" The human fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. Missiles streaked toward the helpless Zorath ships, striking their exposed armor. Fighters swarmed around the flagship, targeting weak points. Explosions lit the darkness as the first enemy vessels began to break apart. On the swift wing, Arya watched the chaos unfold on her display. "Time to leave before they recover. Ryan, get us out of here." The shuttle turned sharply, using the confusion to slip back into the asteroid field. Behind them, the flagship's once perfect formation had collapsed into disorder. For the first time in the battle, the Zorath were on the defensive. Arya knew they had struck a powerful blow, but the fight was far from over. The Aegis array had given humanity a chance, but it would be up to Mason and the fleet to decide the battle's outcome. The swift wing moved silently through the drifting shadows of the asteroid belt. Its engines were on low power, and its heat signature was hidden under a field of controlled emissions. Every sound inside the small shuttle seemed louder than normal. The hum of the life support, the faint clicking of Kalen's console, and the soft beeps from the navigation panel all seemed sharper in the quiet. Arya sat in the command seat, her eyes fixed on the glowing display that showed their route. The Aegis array had been planted on the flagship, and now they had to make sure it stayed active until it completed its full cycle. If the Zorath discovered it too soon, they might shut it down before it could reach its maximum effect. "Distance to safe zone?" Arya asked. Ryan, the pilot, checked his screen. 5 minutes if we keep this speed." Kalen frowned. "We might not have 5 minutes. I am reading increased activity from the flagship's sensor grid. They know something hit them and they are scanning for it." Arya leaned forward. "Keep our path unpredictable. Use the larger asteroids for cover." Outside, enormous rocks floated in slow orbits, their surfaces marked by craters from ancient impacts. The Swiftwing slid behind one, then darted into the shadow of another. A small Zorath patrol craft appeared ahead, scanning the area with bright beams of light. The crew froze, their hands ready over controls, but the patrol passed without spotting them. Back near the colony, the battle was shifting. With the Aegis array active, the Zorath ships had lost much of their advantage. Mason's fleet pressed forward, their weapons striking exposed armor and weak points. A cruiser named the Valor scored a direct hit on a Zorath destroyer, breaking it apart in a burst of flame and debris. On the Horizon's bridge, Drew called out, "Sir, enemy formation is breaking. Several ships are falling back toward the flagship." Mason nodded. "They will try to regroup. Keep pressure on them. The more we keep them busy, the harder it will be for them to find Arya's team." Far away on the flagship, Commander Vurok stood in front of a flickering display. He had already realized something dangerous had been done to his ship. The shields were still down, weapon banks offline, and power surges were spreading through key systems. His engineers worked frantically to stabilize the grid. One officer spoke in a tense voice. "We found an unusual object attached to the outer hull near Reactor Section 3. It is sending a steady pulse through our systems." "Remove it," Vurok ordered coldly. The officer hesitated. "It is shielded and resisting detachment. If we try to cut it, the pulse grows stronger." Vurok's eyes narrowed. "Then find the source of this attack. Whoever did this is still out there." His order sent new patrols into the asteroid belt, hunting for the small ship that had planted the weapon. Back on the Swiftwing, Ryan's voice broke the tense silence. 3 patrols heading our way. Closest one will pass in under 30 seconds, Arya thought quickly. Drop to minimal power. Let them think we are just another piece of debris. The shuttle drifted, its lights completely off, looking like a lifeless rock against the blackness of space. Two Zorath fighters flew past, scanning lightly, then veered off toward another cluster of asteroids. But the third patrol slowed down, moving in their direction. Kalen whispered, "They are locking onto us." Arya's decision was instant. "Full power now. Ryan, take us through the narrow channel between those two large asteroids." The engines roared to life, and the swift wing shot forward. Laser fire lit up the darkness behind them as the patrol gave chase. The channel ahead was tight, with jagged rocks spinning slowly in the void. Ryan steered through with skill, avoiding deadly collisions by meters. The pursuing fighter tried to follow, but one wrong turn scraped its wing against a sharp edge of rock. The damage slowed it, giving the swift wing enough distance to slip into another shadowed zone. Inside, everyone caught their breath. Arya checked the mission timer. The Aegis array has 30 more seconds to complete its full cycle. Once it finishes, Mason will have the opening he needs. Back at the battle line, Mason's ships kept pressing. He could feel the tide turning, but he knew the Zorath were still dangerous, even with damaged systems. "Stay alert," he told his crew. "They will fight harder when they realize they might lose." On the flagship, Vurok received the worst news yet. "Commander, the interference is spreading beyond our ship. Our linked fleet grid is collapsing. Weapons are failing across the armada." Vurok slammed a clawed fist against the armrest of his command chair. "Then fight without them. Ram their ships if you must." A sudden alarm sounded on the swift wing. Kalen looked up from his console with a grim smile. "Cycle complete. The Aegis array has fully charged the disruption. They will not recover quickly." Arya opened a channel to Mason. "Mission complete. The flagship is vulnerable. Make it count." Mason's voice came back with steady determination. "We will. Get home safe." The human fleet surged forward, targeting the flagship directly. Missiles tore into its hull and concentrated fire burned through weakened armor plates. Several Zorath ships tried to shield their leader, but their engines sputtered under the disruption, making them slow and clumsy. The swift wing began its retreat toward friendly lines. Behind them, the battle reached a fierce peak. Explosions rippled across the flagship's surface, and thick smoke vented into space. Arya kept her eyes on the growing distance between them and the enemy, but she could not shake the thought that the Zorath would not accept defeat easily. The next phase of the fight would decide whether humanity would survive or be crushed. The horizon's bridge glowed with the light of active battle displays. Red enemy markers filled the tactical map, but several were already blinking out one by one. Mason stood tall in the center, gripping the railing as the ship's engines roared. His fleet was pressing the attack with all the force they had left. "Sir, the Zorath flagship is losing stability," Drew reported. "Its shields are down, weapons are offline, and several secondary reactors have gone dark." Mason gave a short nod. "Then we push harder. Target the ships still trying to protect it." The human fleet moved like a storm, striking the enemy. With precise attacks, small fighters zipped between the massive Zorath warships, hitting vulnerable points. Missile trails lit the blackness of space, followed by flashes of fire as explosions tore through enemy armor. In the middle of the fight, the cruiser Valor made a bold charge, its captain taking it straight into the heart of the Zorath formation. It launched a full spread of torpedoes, blasting apart a destroyer and crippling another. Human ships behind it followed the gap created, breaking the enemy line. On the horizon's left flank, the corvette Seeker was under heavy fire. Mason noticed its shield levels dropping fast. "Move the Seeker behind our forward cruisers," he ordered. "We cannot afford to lose them." As the Seeker pulled back, enemy fire focused on the horizon itself. The ship shook as beams hit its outer armor. Sparks flew from one of the rear panels, and a damage alarm echoed across the bridge. "Minor hull breach on Deck 9, an officer called out. "We are sealing it now." Mason kept his attention forward. "Return fire. Focus on their engines." I want them too slow to escape. Far from the main battle, Aria's swift wing was racing back toward friendly lines. The shuttle was battered from the earlier chase, but its engines were holding. Through the small viewports, the crew could see the scale of the conflict. Dozens of ships trading fire, bright explosions marking victories and losses. Kalen leaned forward in his seat. The flagship looks like it is falling apart. The Aegis array is still active. They will not recover anytime soon. Arya allowed herself a quick breath of relief. Then Mason has his opening. Let's make sure we get back before the next phase. Back on the Zorath flagship, Commander Vurok stood on a tilted bridge. Fires burned behind him, and several control stations were dark. His crew worked desperately to restore basic systems, but the damage was spreading faster than they could repair it. An officer approached with grim news. We have lost contact with half of our escort fleet. The rest are either retreating or disabled. Our long-range weapons are down. Vurok's eyes narrowed. Then we fight with what we have left. Signal all remaining ships to form a perimeter around us. We will crush their lead ship and break their spirit. The order went out, and a handful of Zorath warships began moving toward the horizon. They came in a tight attack pattern, their remaining weapons glowing as they charged. Drew spotted them on the tactical display. Captain, multiple enemy ships, converging on us. They mean to take us out directly. Mason's voice was calm but strong. Then they will find us ready. All ships, form defensive circle around the horizon. Keep the enemy away from our flanks. The battle shifted again. Human ships tightened their formation, creating a protective wall of fire. Enemy vessels slammed into it, exchanging heavy fire at close range. The horizon's guns roared, tearing chunks from Zorath armor. Suddenly, one of the enemy cruisers broke through the defensive ring. It turned its main cannon toward the horizon, preparing to fire. Mason reacted instantly. Bring forward shields to maximum and fire everything we have at that cruiser. The horizon's forward batteries unleashed a storm of plasma and missile fire. The cruiser's armor cracked, then its reactor went critical. A burst of white light swallowed it, leaving only debris drifting in the void. Cheers erupted on the horizon's bridge, but Mason raised a hand. Save it for later. We still have a flagship to finish. The human fleet, encouraged by the destruction of the cruiser, pressed even closer to the Zorath leader. Torpedoes smashed into the flagship's hull, ripping open wide scars. Fire and smoke poured into space as secondary explosions rippled across its length. From her shuttle, Arya watched as the flagship's great guns went dark one by one. They are losing this fight, she said quietly. Ryan adjusted their course toward the horizon. Let's make sure they lose it completely. On the flagship, Vurok realized the truth. His empire's strongest fleet was being driven back by a species they had considered weak. His pride burned, but so did his determination. Prepare the core weapon, he commanded. If we are to fall, we will take their world with us. His officers hesitated. The weapon is unstable in our current condition. Firing it could destroy us. Vurok's voice was like steel. Then so be it. Back on the horizon, Mason's sensors picked up the sudden energy spike from the flagship. Drew's voice was urgent. Sir, they are powering something massive, larger than any standard weapon signature. It is aimed at the colony. Mason's eyes narrowed. They want to destroy Nova Reach before they retreat. All ships, focus fire on that weapon system. We must stop it before it charges. The fleet obeyed instantly. Every available ship turned its guns on the flagship's central section. Explosions flared along its hull, tearing at armor plates, but the energy spike kept growing. Targeting. Data locked, Drew confirmed. Mason gave the final order. Fire! A coordinated barrage of missiles and plasma bolts slammed into the weapon's core. The explosion that followed was enormous, shaking ships on both sides. Pieces of the weapon, spun away into space, glowing red from heat. The energy reading dropped instantly. Cheers rose from the human crews, but Mason stayed focused. The flagship is still active. This is our chance to end it. The human fleet pushed forward one last time, determined to bring the Empire's leader down. The tide of battle had turned, and humanity was not letting it slip away. The battlefield stretched across the blackness of space, littered with burning debris from destroyed Zorath ships. The horizon and its fleet pressed forward, guns blazing, missiles streaking across the void. Every human vessel fought with precision and courage, knowing the fate of Nova Reach rested on their shoulders. Captain Mason's eyes never left the flagship. It had taken heavy damage, its hull scarred by human fire, but it still moved forward with determination. Its remaining weapons glowed intermittently, ready to strike at the human fleet. "Sir, the flagship is trying to fire again," Ensign Drew warned. "The superweapon is recharging." Mason's jaw tightened. "Not if we can help it. All ships concentrate fire on the core weapon, nothing else until it is destroyed." Human pilots maneuvered quickly, weaving through broken debris to reach firing positions. The horizon's cannons roared, sending massive plasma bolts into the heart of the flagship. Explosions rocked the enemy ship, shaking loose panels and venting clouds of superheated gas into space. Inside the Swiftwing, Arya and her crew watched from a distance. The Aegis array had done its work, but the flagship was still dangerous. The massive ship could fire a weapon capable of destroying a planet. They knew that if Mason failed, Nova Reach would be gone. Kalen leaned forward, eyes scanning the tactical display. "We need to get targeting data directly to Mason. If he can hit the core precisely, we can stop it before it fires." Arya nodded. "Send it now." A secure link opened from the Swiftwing to the horizon. Coordinates and real-time energy readings flowed across the bridge display. Mason studied the data, then turned to his officers. "Lock on to the core and fire when ready," he ordered. Meanwhile, inside the Zorath flagship, Commander Vurok watched the human fleet approach. He clenched his fists. The weapon in the center of the ship hummed with energy, growing brighter. He gave one final order to his officers. "If we fall, we will take their colony with us. Fire at will." The first beams shot out, massive waves of energy slicing through space. Several human ships were hit, sending explosions into the void. Mason's shields flared to maximum, holding the horizon steady. "Steady, everyone," Mason said. "Now is our chance." With perfect timing, the human fleet unleashed a coordinated attack. Plasma bolts and missiles hit the core weapon simultaneously. Sparks and energy arcs danced across the hull, and the superweapon shuddered violently. Vurok roared in frustration. "No, it cannot be!" The core began to overload, glowing brighter and brighter until the entire section of the flagship erupted in a controlled explosion. The shockwave tore through the remaining decks of the ship, disabling weapons and knocking out engines. Pieces of the weapon and debris were thrown into space. The flagship lurched, losing control as fires spread across its surface. "Target destroyed," Drew reported. "The superweapon is offline." Mason allowed himself a brief moment of relief. "Good work. Now finish them." The fleet pressed in for the final assault. The remaining Zorath ships tried to regroup, but their formation was broken. Human fighters darted between them, striking vulnerable points. The flagship, already crippled, could no longer support its fleet. Inside the Swiftwing, Arya saw the destruction unfold. "Mason's fleet is doing it. The flagship is going down." Ryan grinned. "Time to get out of here before it blows." The shuttle turned toward the asteroid field, using debris and shadows to escape. Behind them, the flagship groaned and creaked under the damage, its engines failing one by one. Fires spread across every deck. Commander Vurok refused to leave. He stood on the bridge watching his empire crumble. The once mighty ship shook violently as explosions ripped through the hull. Alarms blared, and the remaining crew tried to escape, but many stations were destroyed. With a final roar, the flagship's reactor failed. A massive explosion engulfed the vessel, lighting up space like a second sun. Pieces of metal, fire, and debris were thrown in every direction. The remaining Zorath ships scattered, retreating into the void to escape the same fate. On the Horizon's bridge, the crew cheered quietly, still wary of any remaining threats. Mason allowed a small smile to cross his face. "It's over. The flagship is gone. The rest are fleeing." Drew let out a deep breath. "We did it, sir. They're retreating." Mason turned to his officers. "We need to follow them. Don't give them a chance to regroup. But first, let's make sure Nova Reach is safe." Back at the colony, Governor Harris watched the sky clear of enemy fire. Sirens were still sounding, but the humans had held. Families slowly emerged from shelters, relieved to see the sky free of destruction. On the Swift Wing, Arya checked her instruments one last time. "We've done it! The Aegis array worked perfectly." Kalen nodded. "Humanity's plan worked. We've shown them what we can do." Mason's fleet began collecting the scattered Zorath vessels. Many were badly damaged, unable to fight, and would never threaten humanity again. The victory was complete, but the cost of battle was clear. Human ships had been lost, brave pilots had fallen, and Nova Reach had suffered minor damage from the early attacks. Mason stood on the Horizon's bridge, looking at the stars. The battle was over, but the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had faced the deadliest empire in the galaxy and survived. More than that, they had proven that courage, strategy, and ingenuity could triumph over raw power. Arya's voice came through the comm. "Captain Mason, Swift Wing returning to dock." Mason smiled faintly. "Welcome back, Commander. Excellent work." Outside, the debris of the Zorath Armada floated in silence. The black emptiness of space seemed calmer now, but the galaxy would remember this day. Humanity had struck a decisive blow, and the message was clear. Anyone who underestimated humans would pay a high price. As the Horizon led the fleet back toward Nova Reach, Mason allowed himself a moment to feel pride. They had fought against impossible odds and won. The deadliest empire in the galaxy had been challenged by humanity, and it had been their final mistake. The Horizon led the remaining fleet back toward Nova Reach. Stars sparkled above, and the colony's 2 moons glowed softly in the distance. The battle was over, but the sky was still filled with scattered debris from the destroyed Zorath ships. Human ships moved carefully, avoiding wreckage as they formed a protective perimeter around the planet. Captain Mason stood on the bridge, watching the horizon. The calm after the storm was strange and quiet. The crew were tired but alert, knowing that even in victory care was required. "Status report," Mason said. "Most of the Zorath fleet has fled," Drew reported. "Only small fragments remain, and none are capable of fighting." "Damage to our fleet?" Mason asked. "Several ships lost, minor damage to the rest," Drew replied. "No critical losses outside those destroyed early." Mason nodded. "Good. Begin repairs and preparations for civilians. Nova Reach must recover quickly." Below, Governor Harris had already begun coordinating relief efforts. Civilians emerged from shelters, faces full of relief and cautious hope. Families embraced, children laughed, and engineers moved swiftly to repair minor structural damage. The colony's 2 moons reflected the bright fires of human spirit across the plains. On the horizon, Arya and the Swift Wing crew returned from their mission. The shuttle docked, and the crew were welcomed with cheers. Mason walked toward them, his expression proud. "Excellent work, Commander," he said. "The Aegis array was the key. You gave us the opening to strike decisively." Arya smiled faintly. "We did our part. Humanity's fleet finished the rest." Kalen nodded. "Together, we showed them what humans are capable of. Mason turned, his gaze to the stars. The Zorath underestimated us. They believed their strength would crush us, but they failed to understand one thing. Humanity never gives up. Back at the colony, scientists, engineers, and military personnel worked together to repair infrastructure. The early attacks had caused small fires, damaged energy grids, and knocked out communication arrays temporarily. But the people of Nova Reach moved with purpose. They rebuilt what was broken and strengthened defenses for the future. In orbit, Mason oversaw the cleanup of the remaining Zorath debris. Salvage teams collected usable parts, while damaged ships were towed away. The fleet's presence reassured the colonists below. Nova Reach was safe. Humanity had held. Suddenly, a signal came through. It was from a Zorath scout ship, still in the far distance. The small craft hovered briefly, then turned away, retreating into deep space. Mason observed it carefully. "They are leaving," he said quietly. "They know they cannot win. Humanity has shown its strength." Drew leaned over the console. "Do you think they will come back?" Mason shook his head. "Perhaps someday, but not soon. They have learned a lesson, and we will be ready if they try." Below on the colony, Governor Harris stood in the main square, addressing the people. His voice carried across loudspeakers. "Today we faced an empire thought unbeatable," he said. "But we have survived. Our soldiers, our pilots, our engineers, and our brave citizens have all shown courage. Nova Reach stands. Humanity stands. Let this day be remembered as proof that no power can crush our spirit." The crowd cheered. Families waved banners and children ran across the open plazas, their laughter echoing through the rebuilt streets. The colony's parks and towers reflected the golden light of the rising sun, symbolizing hope and a new beginning. Meanwhile, in the Horizon's command center, Mason spoke with Arya privately. "You did more than your mission," he said. "You helped humanity survive. The galaxy will remember this day." Arya nodded. It was the fleet, the colonists, and every person who refused to give up. Humanity's strength is in all of us. Mason smiled. "And now, we must send a message. Let every civilization in the galaxy know what happens when they underestimate us." He activated a communication array. A clear message was broadcast in every known frequency. "To all who watch the stars, humanity is not weak. We have faced the deadliest empire and survived. We will fight for our homes, our people, and our future. Any who threaten us will face the same fate. The galaxy has seen our courage, and it will remember it." The message repeated across the stars, reaching distant worlds, leaving no doubt of human resilience. In the following hours, the Horizon and its fleet completed repairs, restored communications, and helped the colony stabilize. Ships unloaded supplies, medical teams tended to the injured, and engineers worked on rebuilding energy systems. Nova Reach began to shine again as a symbol of hope, proof that humanity could face any challenge. As night fell, the moons reflected the calm waters of the planet's rivers and lakes. Fires from battle had faded, replaced by small lights in windows where families returned home. Mason stood on the observation deck of the Horizon, looking down at the colony. "This is just the beginning," he said softly. "Humanity will grow stronger, and the galaxy will never forget today." Arya joined him, her gaze following his. "The deadliest empire challenged us. They made a mistake they will never live down." Mason nodded. "Yes, and we will be ready for anything that comes next. Humanity will always rise." In the quiet of space, the Horizon and the human fleet remained vigilant. The stars sparkled above, endless and full of possibilities. Humanity had faced the greatest threat it had ever known, and had emerged victorious. The galaxy had witnessed a new power, a species united by courage, intelligence, and determination. Nova Reach thrived once more, and the story of humanity's triumph spread across the stars. The deadliest empire had been challenged, and it had been their final mistake. The galaxy would remember.